This is August 2nd, 2021,
Got a
and I'm
feed-
hearing an echo for some reason. We're here for a City of Leawood governing body meeting, and I would ask if the clerk would please call the roll.
Mrs. Philla?
Here.
Mr. Osmond? Mr. Rawlings?
Here.
Mrs. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Sipple?
Here.
Mrs. Harrison?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Thank you.
Where's that coming from?
We hope we can correct the echo, or we're going to have a long meeting.
All the more reason to make it short.
Keep your comments short, but they're going to be repeated.
The next item on the agenda might not echo. It is the Pledge of Allegiance, and as you're able, if you'd please rise, and we will face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. It sounds like the echo is fixed.
I just muted it, so hopefully that's.
You muted the echo. Okay, good. Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and I just want to point out that we have a new memo dealing with 7A, B, C, and D, as well as a new cover memo for 8G that simply corrects the date. And I believe you've all been supplied with these
Yes.
on the dais. So,
Move as supplemented.
motion from Ms. Kane to
Second.
approve, and a second from Mr. Sipple. Any discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. And I don't see the citizen sign-in sheet,
There's no sign-ins today.
so there were no citizen sign-ins to speak. Thank you. There are no proclamations. There are no presentations or recognitions. So we move now to special business. Ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance and delivery of $47,790,000 general obligation temporary notes, Series 2021-1. I'm still hearing a bit of an echo. Of the City of Leawood, Kansas, to provide funds to finance the cost of certain public improvement projects within the city, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax, if necessary, for the purpose of paying principal of and interest on said notes as they become due, authorizing certain other documents and actions in connection therewith, and making certain covenants with respect thereto. And Ms. Long, would you like to address us and introduce the guests with you this evening, please?
Absolutely. Dawn Long, Finance Director, and I have with me Dave Arterberry and Ben Thompson. We had our bond sale and temporary note sale this morning and had great results. We had 7 bids on the temporary notes and 8 on the bonds, and the rates were really well. The Morgan Stanley won the bid for temporary notes at 0.120%. And Robert Baird won the bid for the bonds at 1.257%. So really great results. We're really pleased with it. But I'm going to let Dave Arterberry kind of give you an overview of what we did today and the results, and he and Ben can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Those are great results. And while you're there and we have David Arterberry and Ben Thompson, I want to congratulate everyone on our reaffirmation of our AAA bond rating as well. I'm sure that helps us acquire more bids and the results that you've just indicated.
Well, thank you very much, David Arterberry. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And Dawn, I think, did a nice job of talking a little bit about the bids, and I definitely wanted to add in about the rating. It is congratulations on that. This, sometimes when we go through a rating, the calls can be kind of long and involved, and sometimes the rating calls can go very quick and very smooth. And when that happens, I always figure that the analyst is very impressed, and the city's definitely continuing to head in the right direction. And that was really the case in this last rating call. It was a very quick call. The analyst really had a good understanding for the city, and very pleased with the result. The one thing that I would point out that I noticed during this rating call is that when we go back and we look at the city's historical fund balances, and that plays a huge role in your rating, your fund balances over the last decade or so have been very, very consistent, not just in terms of the total dollar amount of fund balances that you have, but as your budget has grown, your fund balances have grown accordingly. So that was something that the rating agencies focused on, and something that I really noticed in this call. So long-winded way of saying you're doing a really nice job, and please keep it up. As far as the sales go, today we gathered in the conference room and we opened bids. The bids on the temporary notes were due at 11:30 this morning. And as Dawn mentioned, you got a total of 7 bids on it, which I think might be a record for the number of temporary note bids. Wow. But I know we set 2 other records. I know it was the biggest temporary note that the city has ever sold, and it was also at the lowest interest rate ever at 0.120968%. And we reviewed the bid. It met all the bidding parameters and was mathematically correct. Then at 12:30, bids were open for the general obligation bonds. And we had a total of 8 bidders, another very nice result. The best bid was submitted by Robert W. Baird and Company, and they've actually purchased some of the city's bonds in the past. The thing that really jumped out about this bid for me was, of the 8 bids we got, 5 of the bids were all within approximately 1/100% of each other. So they were all very closely clumped together. And again, we reviewed the bids, particularly of Robert Baird. It was mathematically correct. It met all the other bidding parameters. So we have no reason, like with the Morgan Stanley bid, that you wouldn't want to proceed and sell the notes and bonds to these organizations. So I welcome any questions you have. I know Councilmember Sippel was sat in on part of the bid opening process today.
Wonderful report, great report. We're very, very delighted, so thank you. Any questions for Mr. Arterberry? Ms. Harrison?
I'll ask a quick one. Yep. So the fund balances, you gave us kudos for our fund balances, if I understood you correctly. Who do we thank for that management and that direction and that, is that Dawn's department or city administrators?
I think it's a combination of finance department, city administration, and the city council. You're the ones who are guiding them. And I think they know administration and finance knows what they need to do to keep those fund balances up. And I think you respect what their approach to it and have followed their guidance. So I think it's a combination of everyone, really.
Well, I'm not a numbers person, so I can't say that I remember anything like this coming in front of me. So I'm going to give all the credit to the others. But thank you for that explanation. That's great to know.
I know we've had our AAA rating for a number of years, too. Don, can you give us the exact number?
We brought that up the other day, and we looked at, in the conference room on the wall, there's a little memento of when the AAA was assigned, and I want to say it was 2005 or something.
I think I stated in my State of the City every year, so I should know. But I know it's well over a decade. I know that.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Nick just checked on the wall, and it's 2008.
2008, so it is over a decade. Thank you for that information. Any other questions and Mr. Thompson, thank you for being here. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Ben Thompson with Gilmore and Bell. It's good to see you all in person, seen a lot of you faces on Zoom recently. I don't have anything to add. I just echo Dave's congratulations on the bond rating. And I feel like every year we're here and we're saying, man, what a great sale, what great interest rates. You know, these are going to be the best we're ever going to see, right? And then the next year we see better rates. So the mayor and I were talking this afternoon, and it's not great to invest at these rates, but it sure is good to borrow. So congratulations, and happy to answer any questions on the bond ordinance resolution.
I have one question, and I don't really know who to address it to, but our issuance of temporary notes, of course, is quite large, and the rate is quite good. And we plan on keeping these as temporary notes generally 2 years, sometimes 3.
Yeah, it varies on the project, how long the construction period is for it and the design and all that. But I think on average, it's probably about, about 2, would you say 2 years or so that each project is temporarily financed?
Just with the strange times we're in today, hopefully everyone has their antennae up for when it would be prudent to turn those over to GO bonds and lock in a good rate as well. So
Yeah.
just thinking about that. And I know you will, just commenting. If there's no further comment, 7A is what we just dealt with it in its entirety, but if I could have a motion for 7A, that's the ordinance for the temporary notes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Harrison, second from Mr. Sipple. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. Sipple,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison,
Aye.
Mrs. Spilla.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's approved unanimously. 7B is a resolution prescribing the form and details of and authorizing and directing the issuance, sale, and delivery of $47,790,000 general obligation temporary notes, Series 2021-1 of the City of Leawood, Kansas, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax if necessary for the purpose of paying the principal of and the interest on said notes as they become due, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain other documents and actions connected therewith.
Move for approval?
Motion from Mr. Rawlings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Sipple. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 7C is an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance and delivery of $18,860,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2021-A of the City of Leawood, Kansas, to provide funds to finance the cost of certain public improvements within the city, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax for the purpose of paying the principal of and interest on said bonds as they become due, authorizing certain other documents and actions in connection therewith, and making certain covenants with respect thereto.
Move to approve.
Motion from Ms. Phila,
Second.
second from Ms. Larson. Any discussion? All right, if not, roll call, please.
Mr. Rawlings,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
Mr. Sipple,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond,
Aye.
Mrs. Spilla,
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, it's approved unanimously. Thank you. 7D is resolution prescribing the form and details of, authorizing and directing the sale and delivery of $18,860,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2021-A of the City of Leawood, Kansas, previously authorized by ordinance number
3056.
3056. Thank you so much. Of the city, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain other documents and actions connected therewith.
Move to approve?
Motion from Ms. Phila,
Second.
second from Mr. Sippel. Is there any discussion? Thank you for that information, Mr. Thompson. If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, it's approved unanimously. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Arterberry, thank you both for joining us this evening and for your good work for the city of Leawood. We do appreciate you greatly. And thank you, Ms. Long. Congratulations on this. And I am still having echo, and I don't know if it's only me that can hear the echo.
I'm not hearing it.
I'm not hearing it.
So it's my
Coming back in.
laptop.
He's coming back in. We sent a message to him.
It would just be nice to not have it go through although the meeting's probably short tonight, but I'm not sure if you can do anything. They tell me I'm the only one that can hear it. Mr. Pelger, thank you. We will see if that's better. It's much better. Thank you. Whatever you did, thank you. All right, we now go to the consent agenda, items 8A through M. And is there anything anyone would like to pull? Mr. Osmond?
8I.
8I. Ms. Kane?
I was the same, 8I.
Okay.
Same, 8I.
8I.
Ooh, hot topic.
Okay.
I had my hand up for that, too.
Are you kidding? I did call in advance and get some information on this, just so you know. I wasn't pulling it, but I also had questions.
I think
Any-
everybody wants a test drive.
Anything else anyone like to pull? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the remaining portion of the consent.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion from Ms. Larson, second from Mr. Sippel. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, it's approved unanimously. Thank you. 8I is approve the payment in the amount of $51,290 for the purchase of one 2022 Tesla Model Y electric vehicle. And I believe we have both our Chief of Police and Captain Yoder, who wrote the memo, and Chief Reddick, thank you for being here. It looks like we have numerous questions, and I'm going to call on Councilman Osmond first, since he pulled it first.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, you and I have had numerous conversations over the past couple of years as to why we could not do an electric vehicle at the time versus why we can do it today. And I know that residents now look at the internet, now look at, what the city is spending. And when they see us spending $50,000 on a police vehicle, I was wondering if you could enlighten us as to what the actual true costs are for an existing Ford versus what we get with a new Tesla, and any difference in savings, potentially short and long term.
Sure. The question of why now and not then, I will tell you, it's a matter of, the market has kind of spoken to that. The parts and pieces for the vehicles are now more available than they were then. The practicality of being able to do it, which if I do have a concern at this point, the dollars and cents, we'll talk about that a little bit. My mind's been put at ease at that. But the practicality of it being a patrol vehicle, if I have concerns, it's still there. But it's not like I'm 51% sure that this is going to work. I'm 90% sure it's going to work. We're going to make this work. I have no problem with that, but of making a practical patrol vehicle. The dollars and cents of that, which that was a huge hurdle for me and Captain Yoder, for anybody who looks at this, I think we all have that same concern. So Captain Yoder, who's been doing the bulk of the heavy lifting on this for us, that's what we had to overcome that. Does this make sense? Because let's be blunt, it's Leawood, and we're going to be having a Tesla potentially. That's what we're asking for. So how are we going to how are we going to sell this? How is it going to make sense? And with that, I would like to point us in the direction of the spreadsheet I've got here, and we'll show you how it works from there. Kurt, do you want to take it from here and kind of go over that?
So our normal patrol vehicles, our Ford Explorers, we're getting into those at just under $40,000, just as a base cost before we outfit it. And then the Tesla's gonna be just over $52,000.
Is that with outfitting or without?
That is before any sort of upfitting goes
Okay.
into it. And then the maintenance costs is where the big savings come in. So we looked at 2020 average costs for our patrol fleet, and we looked at vehicles that were specifically in use for the entire year of 2020. They didn't get changed out in mid-year. And these were vehicles that weren't driven by supervisors. These were the marked patrol units that were going to all calls for service. So that's where we came up with our averages on the maintenance costs and the fuel costs for the course of the year. So after about, when we get into that third year is where the Tesla is going to pull ahead of the Ford as far as cost efficiency.
So the question that I had is, when you're dealing with a previous model, Ford, at what point do we sell that vehicle? How many miles? Is it 100,000? Is it 50,000? Or how many years do we sell that vehicle? And what do we anticipate the Tesla to either sell or keep, or how many miles do we plan on putting on that car?
So we keep our Fords for 3 years, and then they're rotated out, and they will get about 100 to 110,000 miles on them in that time frame. They go to auction, and we've been, over the last few years, we average about $12,000 for the used Ford Explorers. Tesla has an 8-year, 120,000 mile powertrain warranty that comes on it. So I'd like to keep it for 4 years, which will get us right up to that 120,000 mile mark, but I'd like to sell the car off before those batteries leave warranty. And I have just a best guess on what that car will sell at auction for, because there is no data out there right now on used Teslas used in this market.
Okay, thank you so much.
Before we go to the other questions, Captain Yoder, your spreadsheet's showing $52,190 for the purchase, and our agenda and memos say $51,290. So do we need to adjust when indeed we're ready for a motion and make it the actual cost of the car?
Yeah, probably.
Probably? Okay. Just checking. All right, thank you. Ms. Kane, I think you're next.
My questions were covered, thank you.
All right. Ms. Larson?
Quick question, do any other police departments in our area have a Tesla?
No, we would be the first in this area that would have gone down this road. We did reach out to a lot of different agencies across the United States that have done this, and they've had their programs in place for 2 to 3 years. Every agency that we've talked to is now expanding their Tesla project or Tesla vehicles in their fleet because they've just had such overwhelming success. But we would be the first in this region.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rawlings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Several of my questions have been answered, but what's the cost to install a charging station, and where will they be? And how long does it take for the Tesla to be charged up?
So there's 3 different options when it comes to charging a Tesla. One is on a 110 volt, which would be similar to a wall outlet.
It takes 2 weeks.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
It does, seriously.
The second option is a 240 volt system, and it would charge a completely dead battery to 95% in about 2 to 3 hours. And then there's a supercharge system, which would charge it in 45 minutes, but the supercharging system is not available to anybody right now, and there's only 3 in the metro, 2 in Johnson County and 1 at Tesla, Kansas City, the 103rd state line. So the charging system that we propose to be installed would be installed at the police department, but in the Sally port, would run out to where we would park the cars to be charged when the officers are either at the station or not in use.
What is Tesla saying, or what's your research show when the car is idling in a lot looking for criminals in a hot day like today or last week and the air conditioning is running? What does that do to the battery life and as it relates to getting back to a full charge?
It's going to use the battery. They can't really tell me how long it's going to take for the battery to deplete. It just depends on how long they're sitting.
Okay. You're saying that the gas-powered, you use them keep them for 3 years and then send them back and get maybe 12,000 back at 110,000. The Tesla, the battery life, I know, the research I did was a lot of the batteries last up to 500,000 miles, okay? And so that's a long way away from the 110, 100 mileage that are on the gasoline powered. So I guess my question is, why now? What's it gonna, I mean, I don't see the Tesla may start saving in 4 years, according to your spreadsheet, but we get rid of the gasoline powered in 3 years and start over again in a much cheaper vehicle. So I guess the question is, what's convincing you that we need a Tesla now?
I think that the market is going to push the electric vehicles into a more prominent position into our roles, more so than the gasoline engines. Trying to get ahead of that trend or that curve so that when it is actually forced upon us, that we are way ahead of that curve.
So you're talking about a buyback in maybe in 4 years?
Yes.
And what's the estimate on the buyback cost?
I'm guessing on the low-end range of what used Teslas are selling for at $20,000, but it's an estimate.
Can we see the spreadsheet again? I think,
There you go.
Are you finished, Mr. Rawlings?
That's it, thank you.
I know on the agenda item above this that was not pulled is the charging station for $21,460, but I think it's for 8, if I recall.
Yeah, that is supposed to that will have enough power going to the systems to charge 6 to 8 vehicles.
So if we're buying one, who do you think's going to use those others?
For the time
We're buying
being,
one Tesla, but we're buying 8 charging stations. So do you feel like your employees, your other officers are going to have Teslas and be charging them, or?
yeah, you go ahead.
No, that would be strictly prohibited. There would be no employees down there doing that. I don't think we're at a point where we want to allow employees to do that. I mean, we're pretty gracious to our employees. I think that's too much. That is fully anticipating where Captain Muir was talking about the market. Whether or not the patrol vehicles move that way, which I believe they will be moving that way, it's certainly foreseeable that our civilian cars, our unmarked cars, for lack of a better way of putting it, would be moving to electric, I think, in the very near future. I don't see any reason why not to go that, if it maintains economic feasibility to do that.
But you're not envisioning people on the street
Oh,
come
absolutely
in
not.
and?
No, they don't have access to our Sally Port.
Okay.
Yeah, this is in our garage area down there, our
Oh,
enclosed
in
garage
your
area.
garage area?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I thought it was,
Oh, no, I'm sorry
outside.
about that. I made an assumption there.
Okay.
But yeah, this is in our garage area there.
thank you. Mr. Sipple?
Question for Captain Yoder again on the spreadsheet that you've got there on the overhead. You have maintenance costs on the gasoline automobiles. You don't have any maintenance costs on the Tesla. And if you're going to put $100,000 or $150,000 on the Tesla, you are going to be talking brakes and tires and suspension and all these other kind of maintenance costs. And are we talking apples and apples on this spreadsheet?
So there are no the replacement tires are not factored into this because they're the same tire. The Tesla doesn't use special tires or anything of that nature. So tires are going to have to be replaced no matter what.
Well, what's in the maintenance costs on the gasoline automobile?
Oil changes, filters, belts, water pumps.
Okay,
things like that, none of which are on a Tesla.
okay.
Tesla Kansas City has yet to replace a set of brakes on a vehicle under 100,000 miles because the vehicle uses its engine for stopping power. It's regenerative braking, which means the batteries get a recharge while the brakes are applied or while the engine slows the vehicle down. So there's very little wear on the brake pads themselves on a Tesla.
Thank you, Captain.
Ms. Villa?
So if I'm looking at the spreadsheet, I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. So that, if you look at cumulative cost in year 3, we're 44 with the gas, and we're minus 10,000 for a Tesla. And then it really, if you go to the end of the chart, the cumulative costs are 138,000 for gas, and it's 68,000 for electric. So it really improves over time because you're keeping a car 4 versus 3 and the lower maintenance.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Osmond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But I want to point out, I was very skeptical about this a couple of years ago. Looking into it a little bit more, my wife did purchase a electric vehicle last year, and the cost savings and the comfort of driving is substantially different than driving a regular vehicle. On the spreadsheet that you did and you put up here, it's very evident that after little over 2 years, you recoup your money back. The difference between fuel and maintenance, you're spending $5,000 each year, basically, that you're not having to do with a Tesla. So that that 10,000 more that you're spending is actually being paid back after year 2. And that 20,000 number that you're factoring in is an average, but what we don't factor in is after 4 years, we might determine that we might keep that car because our policy is 120,000 miles. But if it lasts to 400,000 miles, you might keep that car and have no expense after the first 3-4 years. So I see nothing but benefits, at least for buying one car, to see what this prototype or this test market is going to be. So I'm all in favor of it.
I have to add, drive carefully.
Yeah, and-
That would be one reason not to keep it.
And if I could make one other
Sure.
comment, I think, did you have another question, Lisa? I don't know
I
if the mayor
do.
saw you.
That's all right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I'm repeating myself a little bit here. I'm very aware of the component of us out there driving a Tesla. We're going to do what we can to educate the public on why we think this is a good idea, why we think this is makes economic sense for the citizens as well. And we'll, as any immediate requests, of course, we'll handle those as they come up if that happens. But we'll put the word out over next door and put out something out there and let our residents know that this wasn't just some, we want to drive the cool car. We do think this makes economic sense for the citizens.
So this is not San Francisco $20,000 per trash can on the streets?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, when I called in advance of the meeting and saw the spreadsheet, that gave me a far better comfort level. So thank you, Captain Yoder, for providing that. Ms. Larson?
I was wondering if we could have a copy of the spreadsheet emailed to us after the meeting. I'm all in on the car, and you already addressed my concern that we give Captain Robbins a heads up, and so that he can get out in front of this on social media before someone sees the car parked, and we're proactive instead of reactive on educating the public.
Yeah, but before that car sees the light of day, there will be an education component that's heading out.
When do you expect
Terrific.
to take delivery?
I think it's two months for delivery once the order time. But once it actually gets out, because we got to get the car built after that, and this will be the first for the people who build our cars, this will be the first for them as well, so it may take a little bit longer. Usually that's only a couple of weeks, but 3-4 months, I guess, would be a reasonable expectation.
Ms. Harrison?
Thank you. 2 questions really, because the talk about the charging station, I thought I understood it until some questions were asked. Is there any way that this charging station could be out in front of the Justice Center so that employees or residents could use it when it's not in use?
I would prefer not to do that, to keep this specific to our use over there. I think to have, well, for one thing, I want to track the electricity on, and the usage and how that's, our cost savings are going. But I just think that if we're going to go down that route, I'd almost rather that be a separate decision that we
issue.
make.
Okay.
A separate initiative, let's put it that way, the
Sure.
city does.
Well, you know, I've talked about charging stations here before, several times, so I thought, oh, yay, I won, I got my thing. My second question is, could it become a vehicle, could we keep it and it be a vehicle that our codes people or somebody else drive? If we find that it's just doing really well, but it needs to be retired from?
Yeah, we do that already with our fleet. If we have, for whatever reason, we have a certain vehicle that's aged out or mileaged out, and it's been a really good car, they get repurposed sometimes. So
Okay.
there's no reason that this couldn't be.
And finally, you know, this is my day job coming back to haunt me, but if you're the first one doing this, that's a really great time to say to Tesla, let's make a deal. We'll be your prototype. We'll be your, you can do commercials about us. You can write art, because they're looking for somebody to be the first, you know. That's how it works in
Very
the
true,
marketing
and
world.
as Captain Yoder said, I made sure that he was bringing it up in the discussions, but it's good to be Tesla right now, and I don't think that they really need to
Well,
do
that's
that.
true.
So,
But
yeah,
it's good to be Tesla, that's true, but to be, you know, cities buying
true.
potentially fleets of them someday, it's got to start with somebody.
True.
And this is how it starts, so, great, I'm excited.
Ms. Kane?
This is probably stating the obvious, but we talked about getting ahead of it on next door for the financial reasons, but I think the environmental reasons are worthy of mentioning because, as we all know, it is the way of the world. It is coming whether people like it or not. So for us to get ahead of it, so for the safety of our residents and, you know, to be ahead of when it starts being mandated, I think is so the safety of our residents ultimately and the environmental factors are equally important to the financial savings. It's stating the obvious. I'm sure you already thought of that, but thank you.
And just for Ms. Harrison's benefit, I did see a car, an electric car, charging itself at Hen House over the weekend. First time I've ever seen one of their charging stations in use, but it was in use. So they are around.
Oh, I know they're around, yeah.
Been there for 3 weeks waiting.
Someday we'll be able to.
It's the 100,
If
110.
we're
Move to
ready
approve.
for a motion, I need the motion to read $52,190.
$52,192.
That is on the spreadsheet, and that's not on your agenda, but
Correct.
that's the
I'd like to amend to 52,192.
190.
190. My assistant over here
I
is,
wrote it down wrong.
I believe 190 will get it, otherwise they'll have to throw in $2.
Well, sorry.
We'll come up with the $2.
Second.
Okay, motion from Mr. Osmond, second from Ms. Phila. Any further discussion on this? Good discussion. If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously, and thank you, Chief Reddick and Captain Yoder, and we wish you the best with this, and good luck with your
Thank you.
public relations effort, too. Okay, thank you. So that is the end of our consent agenda, and going to the mayor's report. I hate to disappoint you all, but I have no report this evening. I know, it's
What, are you slacking?
shocking.
The mayor is slacking. No.
And we have no council members' report.
Been out
And
of town?
I have, actually. We have no city administrator's report unless he interrupts me right now. Hearing none, we have no staff reports, so we move to 13, committee recommendations, 13A. And this item is being requested to be remanded to the Planning Commission at the request of the applicant. This is the ordinance approving Planning Commission's recommendation of denial of a rezone from AG and SDO to MXD, preliminary plan, preliminary plat for Cameron's Court located south of 133rd Street and west of State Line Road. And you will see the staff comment that the applicants advised the city that he intends to make changes to the plan that was considered by the Planning Commission. They are therefore requesting that this item be remanded back to the Planning Commission without being heard by the governing body so that the Planning Commission can consider the proposed changes. And the city administrator concurs with this request. Mr. Klein, seeing you here in the room, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
No, not really at this time. That, as the agenda says, the applicant has requested the remand back to the Planning Commission because they do want to make some changes.
Is there any anticipated timeline on when this might be heard again at the Plan Commission?
Yeah, we're thinking that it'll probably go to the September 14th meeting. We want to keep it on its own meeting. The reason being is that in the past, it's taken up all the entire meeting.
And since it's being changed, there will be another public hearing, I am assuming?
There will be another public hearing. From what I understand, I don't believe that they're changing substantial changes per the Leawood Development Ordinance as far as to make substantial changes to it. So basically, the Leawood Development Ordinance has certain criteria that if it, for instance, if you increase the density by more than 5%, or you increase the FAR by more than 5%, or if you decrease the open space by more than 5%, then that kicks it back to actually being considering kind of almost like a brand new preliminary that you do, and then you'd go through the whole notification process. It's my understanding as far as the changes that they're doing actually will lower the density a little bit, and so it wouldn't kick that in.
But minus the notification, and minus the preliminary.
I would imagine that, yeah, we would probably.
Will
sure.
probably be allowed to speak.
Correct.
I'm just, okay, assuming, but
I think, Mayor, you could put that as a condition of the remand if you want to. Normally, you remand it back with instructions to the Planning Commission of what you want them to look at. And if I remember right, the applicant was also concerned, or the city is concerned, would like to have a more full attendance by the Planning Commission, I believe. We had at the last meeting.
Yeah, we had 3 missing.
Three
at
missing,
that
so
one.
it would probably benefit everybody if we could get as many of them there as possible.
well, since we're not discussing this this evening, I would rather not give direction. However, just knowing what our communication has been like with the public, I would certainly like to see them have a public hearing. And I would suggest we make that a condition of the remand if everyone feels that's important. Ms. Kane?
Yes, we receive, as we all know, countless emails to that effect. The limited advance notice, or it was on a such and such a day. We got countless emails to that effect. So if that is available to us as a tool, I think I would really support that.
I think you could. I think the chairman is usually pretty open and pretty, he would err on opening a new hearing rather than not. So I'm looking at Mark, but I think he's done that in the past.
I've heard him do that as well, and I appreciate that.
If we add it to the motion, it would be a definite thing that Mark could have on the agenda and let the public know.
Great, thank you. Ms. Harrison?
Councilwoman Kane asked one of my questions. My second question is, Mark, I'm having a little trouble with the reading of this. Revisions include the replacement of twin villas with single-family residences. Ooh.
Mr. Lambers? We're not to talk about it. We're to remand it,
Okay.
but with the public hearing. All right.
And that's an Interact meeting, or is that separate?
No, that's, public hearing is at the Planning Commission meeting itself.
Okay.
But they open and close their public hearings. And sometimes once it's closed, it's closed. It's unlike citizen comments where we're always amenable to citizen comments. So it
Okay.
is a little different.
Okay. There wouldn't be another Interact meeting because it's coming back again around the,
Well,
They-
it would have to be changed dramatically.
okay.
Yeah, don't have substantial changes as far as per the development ordinance.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, so
Would you like a motion?
I would like to ask Mr. Lambers if he has any further comment before we take a motion. You came in here for? Okay. All right, then I would entertain a motion, please, to accept the applicant's request for a remand to the Planning Commission at a date appropriate to our planning staff,
So moved.
With the condition,
with the condition of the public hearing being reopened.
Yes.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Larson, second from Ms. Villa. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, it's approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Moving now to 13B, ordinance amending section 16-2-10.3 of the Leawood Development Ordinance entitled Materials and Colors Pertaining to Roofing Materials for Single-Family Residential Structures, and repealing existing section 16-2-10.3 and other sections in conflict herewith.
Sorry.
And
Scooting over.
Mr. Klein, you're going to be speaking to this.
This application is with regard to roofing materials, and I know that we've done a couple of others already. These have to do with single-family homes, and the ones that we didn't, that we've already done is addressed as far as the color, to allow darker colors and a little bit more color selection than what we had before. And we also added as far as a solar slate to it. This particular one is kind of one of the major issues that's come up over time. The Leawood Development Ordinance has weight requirements that it has as far as minimum weights. Originally, those started out as far as 300 pounds per square. And so what a square is, it's a 10-foot by 10-foot section, and so 100 square feet. And generally, when roofers go out and they measure your roof, they figure out how many squares you need to put on the roof. And so originally, it was 300 pounds per square, and then they started coming out with impact-rated shingles. Impact-rated shingles basically could take the impact of a piece of hail, and so it wouldn't lose the granules quite so much, and if it did lose the granules, the UV rays would not break down that. The SBS modified it, or they have an asphaltic base that's to it, and so that wouldn't degrade, which means that your roof wouldn't leak. As a result of that new technology, they actually had lower weights than the 300 pounds per square. So Leawood Development, we did change the Leawood Development Ordinance quite some time ago to allow lighter weights for the Class 4 impact-rated shingles. Currently, right now, that's 265. So right now, the minimum weight requirements that we have are 300 pounds per square if it's non-Class 4, and 265 pounds per square if it is a Class 4 impact-rated shingle. Over time, however, technology has changed quite a bit from what it used to be. And what has happened is due to the new technology, for various different reasons, these shingles have gotten substantially lighter than what they were before. In addition, they've also gotten a little bit thinner than what they had before. And we talked with the 5 major manufacturers of roofing materials. We talked to a couple of developers. We talked to some roofing contractors to try and get input from everybody. We got lists of roofing materials from the various roofing manufacturers showing us ones that met the weight requirement and ones that didn't meet the weight requirement, so we could go out and we could actually compare. And the entire staff more or less did that to see if we could see a difference. Pretty much everybody that we talked to indicated that we probably weren't going to see a whole lot of difference, just because we're talking about that weight being distributed over 100 square feet, and it's going to be on top of a roof. And when staff went out, we really didn't see too much of a difference. All of the roofing manufacturers and developers and contractors pretty much agreed that the roofing material now is of a higher quality than what it was before. So as far as performance, it actually outperforms what was originally that we had 20 years ago, for instance. And the reason for that is that they've come up with a better sealants that actually hold the shingles together. It's my understanding from talking to some of the manufacturers, the reason for the weight originally was if you had wind come along and the wind loads, the heavier it was, then the harder it was going to be to blow off the roof. Now with this new sealant that's on there, they don't have that concern anymore. Some of the manufacturers have reduced the amount of sand in the product, which they used to put in there to make it heavier. Other ones have actually taken some of the granules that's on the kind of where it gets overlapped by the shingle above it. They used to have a lot more granules there, and they took those off, so that made it lighter as well. And some of them have reduced as far as the amount of asphalt that's into it. And then also as far as in the Class 4, they've done that two ways. The SBS is a rubberized material that they mix in with the asphalt, and therefore it tends to be a lot lighter than what the asphalt shingles were. So after looking as far as the performance issues, staff really didn't have any concerns with regard to the performance issues, so we were kind of left with the aesthetics part of it. And what we found is that with the shadow lines, and shadow lines have always been part of the Leawood Development Ordinance, and it's actually kind of a darker line that's located underneath the shingle. And the idea is that it adds depth to the shingle. And I have some samples that are out here in front of you. And so you can see the shadow lines on there. The LDO amendment that's proposed for you tonight is basically to say that weight requirement can be reduced from either the 300 pounds per square or the 265 pounds per square down to 200 pounds per square, as long as it has that shadow line. In other words, as long as it has something that makes it look like it has a little bit more definition and a little bit more dimension to it. Now, there are some shingles that do not have that shadow line, but they tend to be a lot heavier. Some of them actually are closer to 400 pounds per square as opposed to the 300 pounds per square that we have. And so those would be required to still meet the 300 pounds per square because they don't have the shadow line, but it would still allow those type of roofing materials, and some of them are the more premium roofing materials that are out there. And so one of the ones that's and the idea is that it actually kind of creates its own shadow line. And so when we go out and we look at these roofs, they do have a little bit more dimension to them. We also addressed as far as the thickness, because what we did is the Leawood Development Ordinance says that there's a minimum of 3/16 at the butt end. When we went out, we got a small caliper and started measuring that to make sure that they're meeting those, and found out that almost none of them do, as far as they have like 3 different plies on a sample, on one of these sample boards. Parts of it are single ply, which doesn't meet the 3/16 at the butt end. Then some of them have a double ply on that same board, and that will be around 3/16 at the butt end. And then some of them will also have 3 ply, and those actually exceed it. So we're proposing that be changed from a minimum of 3/16 at the butt end to an average of 3/16 at the butt end between the different plies that are located on the roof. And so staff is recommending approval, or the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this application. We did have one other change too. There was a requirement as far as master specification on the application materials. That was something that was put in quite a number of years ago by one of the architects that was on the Planning Commission, because it was a publication that contained a lot of specifications. What we found out pretty quickly is that was very, very expensive to get, and most of them did not have that master spec. And then the city would have to go out and do an annual purchase of that master spec. And so it's just something that really hasn't been used, and so we'd like to strike that as well.
Mr. Klein, the the ones with the shadow line on the shingle itself that's drawn on there. So pardon my naivete about this, but when that is put on a roof, does that all come together in a large piece, or is it
They're
piece by piece?
They're usually in strips. So they come along in strips, and then they'll have another strip that will
Okay.
overlay that.
Otherwise, I would think it'd be very tricky to get that.
You're right. No,
Shadow
you're,
line in
you're
the
absolutely
right
to
location.
be able to mix it and that, yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it pretty easy because they have the strips on there.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. Kane, and Mr. Osmond.
Unfortunately, with real estate, I deal with roofs all the time, and I just had a deal fall through because of a roof. So I applaud Leawood as it is, because we do, like always, tend to be more restrictive, which is very good, because if our residents are going out to buy a roof, they don't know, they haven't done the homework. I mean, I do believe that they rely upon our standards. One thing, while you were talking about speaking to the various developers and builders and roofing companies, is that's not who's not creating the issue, but that's over time, once Katrina started and all this with the hurricanes and once now a composite roof has 15 years of age on it, 15 years, and it could be a 50-year roof, 30-year roof. Insurance companies, you get up to 15 years, and they're starting to either charge premiums to insure a roof even of 15 years, even if it's composite. So I would urge you to maybe, if you haven't already, include speaking to the inspectors as well as the insurance companies, because again, it started with Katrina, and Kansas, you know, is historical for hail, and so roofs in Kansas and hail, and it's just a bad combination, very expensive combination. So if we could include the inspectors, and I'm happy to help with names if you need them, and the insurance companies, because things have really, really changed. And so again, I applaud about how we mandate the ice shields, and we mandate, I just got the other day, I had it, again, it fell apart because they said when it went from a shake roof to a composite roof, it had the venting for a shake roof, but they didn't spend the money to put the adequate venting in for a composite roof, therefore it deteriorated quicker than it should have. So it's just these layers of things that a homeowner would have no way of knowing, but I do think that they look to us for some guidance. So that would be my 2 cents on roofs, which are expensive items, and if they're done correctly, they can last longer. It's kind of like the Tesla, but if they're not done correctly, you know, people spend a whole bunch of money and they do not get anywhere near 50 years. So think they're buying a 50-year roof. The insurance company won't insure any roof that's anywhere, like I said, for the most part, over 15 now. So they may, you know, anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
And interestingly, shake roofs last about 15 years.
Well, yes,
So that's a
actually,
very interesting stat you just shared.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
again, it was, the insurance companies have taken a beating and keep taking a beating with all this climate change. And like I said, it started way back in Katrina, where they got tighter and tighter and tighter in their coverage. So anyway, that's the way I look at a roof, and so thank you for that diligence here. But what I did read was Commissioner Coleman says, they were talking about the 3/16 at the butt end and how you describe that, and he poses the question, is the way it's worded now sufficient to give guidance for contractors to understand those pulling the permits? And your answer is it would be something we would have to explain how we take the measurement. So it seems to me, if, you know, maybe that seems like a lot of work for you and people looking for part of our restrictions, and if they have to have it explained to you personally, by you personally, your staff personally, that seems like kind of a potential problem area. But once again, it's, you know, a plus for doing your job so well and keeping our standards that much higher, because it does benefit our homeowners. Thank you.
And we did talk, because warranties is one of the things that is referred to a lot, and
Right.
it used to be that everybody referred to roofing 50-year warranty. Leawood requires a 50-year warranty. And the problem with the warranties is that they can change at the drop of a hat.
Yeah,
And when
that's
we were-
hooey. Those are all hooey. Don't fall for that.
And we were told that now they're pretty much all lifetime warranties with a bunch of restrictions and prorations and things
If you
like that.
live.
So,
Or they're not
It's not warranted.
transferable.
And-
Yeah, you have
yeah.
to, it's kind of like insurance and on anything, health insurance. You have to read the fine print, understand the fine print. And yes, thank you.
Mr. Osmond?
Julie handled my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Mr. Sipple?
Oh, sorry.
Just one fast question. Are any of the neighboring cities' standards more rigorous than what you're proposing?
you know, honestly, we reached out to other cities and almost nobody regulates roofing like Leawood does. Leawood has some really high standards, but practically, we didn't really have very many comparisons to do. Actually, we didn't really have any comparisons to do.
Good. Thank you.
And similar to Ms. Kane's comments, I have only heard appreciation from our residents that we do regulate and are more restrictive. So I hear that a lot, so thank you.
They used to allow, just a point of, I won't name a city, but they used to allow, they don't do anymore, 5-layer roofs. Can you imagine? 5 layers, and it was allowed not that long ago. So people are different cities are starting to pull in their regulations, but nobody, I think, is probably as comprehensive as we are. And again, I've said it again, but for the minutes, it helps our residents in the end, saves them money in the end.
Yeah.
So they should be thankful.
Mr. Osmond, would you like to make the motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Osmond, second from Ms. Kane. Good discussion, and thank you for your good work on this. And roll call, please.
Mrs. Kane?
Aye.
Mr. Osmond?
Aye.
Mrs. Phila?
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mrs. Harrison?
Aye.
Mr. Sipple?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's approved unanimously. Moving to old business, item 14, ordinance amending section 5-523 of the Code of the City of Leawood 2000 pertaining to massage establishment facilities and repealing existing section 5-523 and other sections in conflict herewith. Again, do we have Mr. Torres here? Mr. Torres?
Hello.
Good evening.
Travis Torres, Director of Building and Code Enforcement. We're bringing back to you tonight the possible amendment that would lift the prohibition of table showers and bathtubs, and then provided you with information as requested from other cities and the Elms Spa.
Great. Thank you. And so
Yes.
you're here for questions?
Any questions?
All
Yes.
right. Mr. Osmond and Ms. Kane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This code revision addresses one issue, but I know that we've had applicants come before us asking for other changes, and specifically, previously, there were 3 criteria that in our code we needed to look at. First, table showers. That's being addressed tonight. The second pertains to potentially alcohol within the establishment. I know that other municipalities allow for alcohol. And third, candle lighting or lumens for inside the room. And I believe that this individual asked for the difference, the light, there was a problem with the lighting, light versus where the table was, and complaints for getting a massage. So I don't know if we could look at those in the future for addressing the lumens. I know Massage Envy also came before us a year or 2 ago, had some revisions, but also we looked at the lumens at that point in time. So I know that staff has done a great job at reevaluating things, but are these things that we could look at a little bit further? Thank you.
Was there another? Mr. Sipple?
Travis, with the changes that are proposed here, would the applicant that had the very high-end spa application to us 5 months ago, would they then meet our requirements?
Yeah, I don't believe there was any other issues. That was the only pending item that had been kind of continued till we brought information back to council.
Thank you.
Ms. Kane?
In reading this, in your summary on the back, it says Lenexa OP and Olathe table showers are prohibited. And then the rest of them, it says no mention of table showers. And frankly, I don't even know what a table shower is, but I find that it's interesting that they're strictly prohibited, not just prohibited, but strictly prohibited. And then, and/or not mentioned. And again, I don't even know what one is, and maybe the spa owner could enlighten us. Why would 3 very nearby cities strictly prohibit them? And, what are they missing? What are we potentially missing? And/or they're not even listed. I thought that was kind of interesting when I read the fine details here.
Julie, would you want to speak to that?
Good evening, and if you'll introduce yourself again for the record, please.
I'm Julie Rome, and I'm the franchise partner of the Woodhouse Day Spa over at Town Center Crossing and also a Leawood resident. The table shower is commonly known as a Vichy shower, and I can't speak to the other close municipalities of Lenexa, Overland Park, and Olathe. I do know that the 2 closest Vichy showers are at the Elms, which is kind of a similar concept to ours, and also Chateau on the Lake at Lake of the Ozarks would be the second closest Vichy shower. And what it is you get a massage on a table. You can also get a wrap. At our spa, we can get a seaweed wrap or a mud wrap, followed by an exfoliation with kind of a shower bar is how I would describe it. And you have water that's cold and hot that is taking off the mud while you're getting the exfoliation, is what the table shower is.
So instead of taking off the mud with the hot, wet towels, thank you, that I've had done before. So this is just a method of removing the mud. And I'm sorry if you said this once before and I just missed it. But I think what we didn't have was, and that's why we asked for the data about what's happening around us. And so, that seems certainly logical and plausible to me. Why do you think cities, well, you don't know. I mean, why would there be a general misunderstanding or a prohibition to some things? Sounds pretty simple and logical to me.
Right.
And nothing scary.
I have anecdotal evidence of the code being updated. I don't know if there was an issue with kind of a massage parlor in town a few years ago. So the city went and updated the code for that particular incident. However, we are a different concept. We are the 72nd franchise location in the United States, and no other city has had this particular, the owner, the firm that owns the Woodhouse has never had this issue before with any of those other 72 cities.
So they have the Vichy shower and everything's hunky-dory.
In every city. That's
There we go. All right, thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Mr. Torres, if this is approved this evening, and I'm anticipating it will be, does it go into effect with the publication, or what is the?
I believe so, yes.
So it would be within a week?
Yes, August 11th, it'll be published.
Okay. Very good.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion from Ms. Villa and a second from Mr. Rawlings. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Harrison?
Aye.
Mr. Sipple?
Aye.
Mr. Rawlings?
Aye.
Mrs. Phila,
Aye.
Mr. Osmond,
Aye.
Mrs. Kane,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, it's approved unanimously, and thank you, Mr. Torres, for your work on this. Ms. Roan, thank you for being here and for your enlightening us on this. We're delighted to have you located in Leawood.
It sounds like a nice Christmas gift
Yes, it does.
or a birthday gift.
Where's
Yes,
the mud come from?
not from your yard.
They bring the mud overseas.
Going to item 15, new business, schedule a governing body meeting for Monday, August 16th, 2021 at 7 p.m. I would take a motion, please.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Rawlings,
Second?
second from Mr. Sippel. Any discussion? 7 p.m.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're forgiven.
If
for-
there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously, and having no further business to come before this body, we are adjourned. Thank you.
8:15, nice.